A family took their frail elderly mother to a nursing home and left her, hoping she would be well cared for. The next morning, the nurses bathed her, fed her a tasty breakfast, and set her in a chair at a window overlooking a lovely flower garden. She seemed okay, but after a while, she slowly started to tilt sideways in her chair. Two attentive nurses immediately rushed up to catch her and straighten her up. Again, she seemed okay, but after a while, she slowly started to tilt over to her other side. The nurses rushed back and once more brought her back upright. This went on all morning and repeated again the following day. On the second afternoon, the family arrived to see how the old woman was adjusting to her new home. "So, Ma, how is it here? Are they treating you all right?" "It's pretty nice," she replied, "except they won't let me fart." A couple was celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary when the wife claimed that she and her husband hadn't argued since their wedding night. After being asked about how they did it, the wife explains that after their wedding ceremony, they went and took a little honeymoon in a horse and buggy. The horse walked 10 miles and stopped, refusing to go further. "That's one," said the wife. The horse looked back, walked another 5 miles, and stopped, refusing to go further. "That's two," said the wife. The horse looked back, walked another 5 miles, and stopped, refusing to go further. "All right, that's three," said the wife angrily. She stepped out of their buggy, grabbed a shotgun, and shot the horse. "Hold on," the husband said. "What do you think you are doing? We are 20 miles from home with no way back, and that was a vicious act of animal cruelty." The wife looked at her new husband and said, "That's one." A woman is at home one night with just a dog because her husband is out drinking again, but the dog keeps farting and he's stinking up the house. So she calls up her best friend and asks if she has any ideas about this. "Tie a ribbon firmly around the dog's genitals," she said. "That should keep him from breaking wind." She thinks it's odd, but she figures it's worth a try, so she ties a red ribbon around the dog's genitals. And it works! The dog stops farting. Eventually, her husband comes home, drunk again, staggers onto the bed, falls fast asleep, and then lets out a huge fart. "Oh, this is even worse than the dog," she thinks, holding her nose. But then she thinks, it worked for the dog, so why not try it on her husband? So she ties a blue ribbon around her husband's genitals, and he doesn't fart again either. In the middle of the night, the husband wakes up, and after his night of drinking, he really needs to pee. So he walks into the bathroom, turns on the light, and looks at the ribbon tied around himself, and then he sees the dog lying on the floor, similarly decorated with a ribbon. He scratches his head and says, "Duke, I don't remember what we did last night, but at least we came in first and second." A man is about to walk into a bar known for having lots of beautiful women when a bouncer stops him at the door. The bouncer says, "We have a dress policy where ties are mandatory for men, and you are just wearing a shirt that's open at the collar. So, sorry, I can't let you in." So the man returns to his vehicle to see if he has a tie anywhere. Sadly, he doesn't, but while looking, he notices a set of jumper cables in the back of his car. He's desperate to get into the bar, so he fashions the jumper cables into a rough tie knot around his neck with the ends dangling free. When he goes back to the bar, the bouncer looks him over carefully and then nods. "Okay, I guess you can come in now," he says. "Just don't start anything." A cowboy on a long journey stops at a small town to wet his throat. He ties his horse up outside the saloon and enters. The townsfolk eye him uneasily, but he makes his way to the bar and orders a beer. The bartender opens his beer and sets it down on the table. "I'd be careful if I were you. Townsfolk don't take kindly to newcomers. They give them a hard time. And that's what you are, a newcomer." "Is that so?" the cowboy lazily says as he rests his head on his fist and sips his drink. The bartender turns around, rolling his eyes. The cowboy stays a good 10 minutes finishing his drink, then walks back outside to carry on his journey, but when he gets out there, he finds his horse to be missing. The cowboy storms back into the bar, draws his pistol, and fires it into the ceiling. The cowboy says, "All right, which one of you sidewinders stole my horse?" The townsfolk looked at each other and then back to the cowboy. You could hear a pin drop. "Well, nobody knows? All right, well, I'm going to go back to that bar and have myself another drink." If I finish that drink and go back outside, and my horse still isn't there, I'm going to have to do what I did in Texas, and I don't like having to do what I done in Texas." The cowboy, true to his word, goes back to the bar, drinks another beer, and goes back outside, and like magic, his horse is back. The cowboy gets back on his horse like it never left and begins riding out of town. That's when the bartender runs outside and calls out to the cowboy, "Excuse me, sir, I gotta know, what did you have to do back in Texas?" The cowboy turns around, looks at the bartender, and says, "I walked home." A 90-year-old man goes for a physical and all of his tests come back normal. The doctor says, "Larry, everything looks great. How are you doing mentally and emotionally? Are you at peace with God?" Larry replies, "God and I are tight. He knows I have poor eyesight, so he's fixed it. So when I get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, poof, the light goes on. When I'm done, poof, the light goes off." "Wow, that's incredible," the doctor says. A little later in the day, the doctor calls Larry's wife. "Bonnie," he says, "Larry is doing fine, but I had to call you because I'm in awe of his relationship with God. Is it true that he gets up during the night and poof, the light goes on in the bathroom, and when he's done, poof, the light goes off?" "Oh, sweet Jesus," exclaims Bonnie. "He's peeing in the refrigerator again." A guy's playing golf with his wife. They're on the 12th hole, and the guy slices his tee shot right into the woods. He trudges into the woods and locates his ball. It's in a little clearing, but there's a big barn between him and the green. He takes a good look and says, "Listen, honey, I think if you hold the barn door open, I can hit the ball right through the barn and onto the green." So his wife goes over and holds the door open. The guy takes a 4-iron and whack, hits the ball. The ball hits his wife right between the eyes, killing her instantly. Well, it's a year later, and the guy is on the same golf course with his new wife. They're on the 12th hole, and once again, he hits a slice into the woods. Shaking his head with disgust, he heads into the woods. Sure enough, his ball is in about the same spot. Sadly, he takes out a 7-iron and lines up to hit the ball sideways back onto the fairway. Before he can take the shot, his new wife says, "Honey, you know, I think I might be able to hold the barn door open for you. That way you can hit the ball through the barn and onto the green." The guy just shakes his head. "No way, dear," he says. "I tried that last year and ended up with a 9 on the hole." One evening after the honeymoon, Bob was working on his Harley in the garage. His new wife was standing there by the bench watching him. After a long period of silence, she finally said, "Honey, I've just been thinking. Now that we're married, maybe it's time you quit spending so much of your time out here in the garage. You probably should consider selling your Harley and all that welding equipment. They take up so much of your time, and that gun collection and fishing gear, they just take up so much space. And you know that boat is such an ongoing expense and you hardly use it. I also think you should lose all those stupid model airplanes and your home brewing equipment. And what's the use of that vintage hot rod sports car?" Bob got a horrified look on his face. She noticed and said, "Darling, what's wrong?" He replied, "You were starting to sound like my ex-wife." "Ex-wife?" she shouted. "You never told me you were married before." Bob replied, "I wasn't." An 85-year-old couple is going on holiday when they suddenly die in a plane crash. They had been married for 60 years and kept in good health due to their healthy diet and regular exercise. When they reached heaven, St. Peter took them to their mansion, decked out with a fully stocked kitchen, master bath suite, and their very own jacuzzi. As his wife oohed and ahed at their new possessions, the old man asked Peter how much all of this was going to cost. "It's all free," Peter replied. "We asterisk in heaven after all." Next, they surveyed the lush championship golf course behind their home, where they were entitled to play every day. Of course, all the old man wanted to know was, "How much are the green fees?" "It's free," came the reply. Next, they went to the clubhouse and saw the lavish buffet on offer, with all of the world's different cuisines on offer, every meal cooked to perfection. "How much do we have to pay for 2? asked the old man. "Don't you understand yet?" Peter replied, exasperated. "It's all free. You're in heaven." "Well, where are the low-fat and cholesterol tables, then?" The food won't have too many calories, will it? The old man asked, looking quite worried. That's the best part of heaven, St. Peter said excitedly. You can eat as much of whatever you want, and you won't gain a single gram. With that, the old man went into a fit of anger, throwing down his hat and stomping on it wildly. His wife and Peter tried to calm him down, asking what was wrong. The old man looked at his wife. "This is all your fault!" he screamed. "If it weren't for you and your blasted bran muffins, I could have been here 10 years ago." A woman and her husband had been married for 60 years and had remained faithful and loving this entire time. However, the woman did have one secret, a shoebox in her closet. The shoebox itself was not a secret, but the wife had told the husband that he was never to open or ask about the box, so the contents remained unknown. The wife fell ill one day, and the doctor said she may not make it. The husband took the box and brought it to her bedside and asked if he may open it. With her permission, he took the top off and pulled out $95,000 and 2 crocheted dolls. He asked what all of this was. "Well," the wife began, "my grandmother once told me that the secret to a successful marriage was to never get angry at your husband. Instead, when you're angry, you should crochet a little doll." The husband began to weep tears of joy that she had been angry so few times. "That's wonderful, dear," the man began. "But what's with the $95,000? That's the money I made from selling dolls." A few minutes later, their second son, David, arrived. He gave his parents a warm hug and said, "Mom, Dad, you both still look amazing. I just flew in from LA this morning, and between work and travel, I didn't have time to pick up a present. Hope that's okay." Again, Mr. Thompson smiled. "It's nothing, son. We're just happy to see you." Finally, their daughter, Sarah, walked in, balancing a phone call while hurriedly taking off her coat. Hi, happy anniversary," she said, planting kisses on their cheeks. "I feel awful, but my boss just informed me I have to leave for a business trip tomorrow, and I've been packing like crazy. I didn't have a chance to get you a gift." Her father put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "No worries, sweetheart. What matters is that all 5 of us are here tonight." Dinner was filled with laughter, stories, and warm reminiscing about the years gone by. When dessert was finally finished, Mr. Thompson set down his fork, cleared his throat, and looked at his children with a twinkle in his eye. "Now that we're all together, there's something your mother and I have wanted to tell you for a long time," he said, his voice taking on a serious tone. "You see, when we were young, we were very poor. Even so, we worked hard to raise you, put you through college, and give you everything we could. But, well, in all that time, we never actually got around to getting married." The room fell silent. The 3 siblings exchanged stunned glances before Mark finally blurted out, "Wait, you mean we're bastards?" Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, took a sip of his coffee, and with a mischievous grin said, "Yep, and cheap ones, too." There he was, crouched on the side of the highway, struggling with a stubborn flat tire. Sweat dripped down his forehead, leaving dark smudges where he'd wiped it away with grease-stained hands. His once crisp white shirt now bore the battle scars of his efforts, and his tie hung limply around his neck like it had given up on life altogether. Standing beside him was his wife, Claire, immaculate, untouched by the chaos, and in the middle of an enthusiastic lecture on the proper way to change a tire. "You're doing it all wrong, David," she sighed, arms folded. "You should loosen the lug nuts before you jack up the car. Honestly, how many times do I have to tell you?" David clenched his jaw, gripping the tire iron just a little too tightly. Just then, a kind-hearted motorist pulled over, rolling down his window. "Hey there, looks like you're having some trouble. I've changed a lot of tires. Maybe I can help?" David looked up, a glimmer of hope in his exhausted eyes. "Oh, you sure can," he said, exhaling heavily. "My wife here is also an expert. If you could just take over arguing with her about the right way to do this, I'll handle the dirty work and get it done." A woman meets a man at a bar. They chat, hit it off, and eventually leave together. They arrive at his place, and he gives her a tour of his apartment. When they get to the bedroom, she's stunned to see one entire wall covered with shelves filled with teddy bears, hundreds of them, small, medium, and large, carefully arranged in neat rows, covering the entire wall. It's obvious he's put a lot of thought and care into organizing them. Though she finds it strange for a man to have such a large collection of teddy bears, she's genuinely touched by his sensitive side. She doesn't mention it, but as they continue talking and share a bottle of wine, she starts to think, maybe this guy could be the one. He could be the future father of my children. Feeling bold, she leans in and kisses him softly on the lips. He responds with equal warmth, and their kiss deepens. The passion builds quickly, and before long he lifts her into his arms and carries her to the bedroom. Clothes are quickly discarded, and they make wild, passionate love. After an intense night, they lie in the afterglow, breathing heavily. She rolls over, gently strokes his chest, and with a playful smile asks, "So, how was it?" He smiles softly, strokes her cheek, looks deep into her eyes, and replies, "Help yourself to any prize from the middle shelf." In a crowded bus, a blonde woman turned to the man standing behind her with an annoyed expression. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "Something of yours keeps touching me from behind." The man, looking slightly embarrassed, replied, "Oh, sorry. That's just my salary in my pocket." The blonde raised an eyebrow and stayed quiet for a moment, but after a few minutes she turned around again and said, "You filthy liar! Your salary has tripled in the last 5 minutes!" During lunch at work, I ate 3 plates of beans, which I know I shouldn't. When I got home, my husband seemed excited to see me and exclaimed delightedly, "Darling, I have a surprise for dinner tonight." He then blindfolded me and led me to my chair at the dinner table. I took a seat, and just as he was about to remove my blindfold, the telephone rang. He made me promise not to touch the blindfold until he returned and went to answer the call. The beans I had consumed were still affecting me, and the pressure was becoming unbearable. So while my husband was out of the room, I seized the opportunity, shifted my weight to one leg, and let one go. It was not only loud, but it smelled like a fertilizer truck running over a skunk in front of a garbage dump. I took my napkin from my lap and fanned the air around me vigorously. Then, shifting to the other leg, I ripped off 3 more. The stink was worse than cooked cabbage. Keeping my ears carefully tuned to the conversation in the other room, I went on releasing atomic bombs like this for another few minutes. The pleasure was indescribable. Eventually, the telephone farewells signaled the end of my freedom, so I quickly fanned the air a few more times with my napkin, placed it on my lap, and folded my hands back on it, feeling very relieved and pleased with myself. My face must have been the picture of innocence when my husband returned, apologizing for taking so long. He asked me if I had peeked through the blindfold, and I assured him I had not. At this point, he removed the blindfold, and 12 dinner guests, seated around the table with their hands to their noses, chorused, "Happy birthday!" A woman comes home after visiting a hypnotist and tells her husband, "You know those headaches I've been having all these years? Well, they're gone." The husband, surprised, asks, "No more headaches? What happened?" She replies, "Margie recommended a hypnotist. He told me to stand in front of the mirror, stare at myself, and repeat, 'I do not have a headache, I do not have a headache.' And it worked. The headaches are all gone." The husband, impressed, says, "Well, that's wonderful." The wife then adds, "You know, you haven't exactly been a ball of fire in the bedroom lately. Maybe you should go see the hypnotist too, and see if he can help with that." The husband, curious, agrees to try it. After his appointment, he comes home, rips off his clothes, picks up his wife, and carries her to the bedroom. He puts her on the bed, says, "Don't move, I'll be right back," and runs into the bathroom. A few minutes later, he returns and passionately makes love to her like never before. Afterward, the wife says, "Boy, that was amazing." The husband grins and says, "Don't move, I'll be right back." He runs back to the bathroom, then comes out, and rounds 2 was even better than the first. The wife's head is spinning with excitement. Then as the husband gets up to leave again, he says, "Don't move, I'll be right back." At this point, the wife, curious and a little confused, quietly follows him into the bathroom. She sees him standing in front of the mirror, repeating, She's not my wife. She's not my wife. She's not my wife. Late one evening, Jake wandered into his kitchen, opened the fridge, and stared inside. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just hoping something delicious would magically appear. As he stood there, a thought popped into his head. "What do you call an encyclopedia in the fridge?" he muttered to himself. He chuckled. "Cold, hard facts." Still no snack inspiration. He tapped his fingers on the fridge door. "What if you crossed a stereo and a fridge?" He grinned. "You'd get some very cool music." The milk carton sat on the shelf looking completely unbothered. Jake smirked. "You know why cold milk is always so relaxed?" he asked the bottle. "Because it chills in the fridge." Just then he reached for the ranch dressing and the bottle tipped over. "Hey, close the door," the ranch seemed to whisper. "I'm dressing." Jake shook his head and muttered, "I really need to get out more." He glanced down at his stomach and sighed. "Maybe I should hit the gym." Then he smirked. "Or I could just grab a six-pack from the fridge and smuggle it in." At that moment, his freezer made a weird humming noise. He pointed at it accusingly. "Why did you never graduate?" "Oh, right, because you were set on 0 degrees." The fridge hummed back, almost as if offended. He stepped back, noticing an old denim jacket draped over a chair. "What's blue, white, and can't climb mountains?" he mused. Then he laughed. "A fridge wearing a denim jacket." As he reached for the butter, he frowned. There were odd marks on the surface. "How do you know if there's an elephant in your fridge?" He gasped dramatically. "Footprints in the butter." His brain was on a roll now. "Why did that guy throw the contents of his fridge out the window?" He shrugged. "Guess he wanted to see the butterfly." Suddenly, an ice cube fell from the freezer onto the floor. Jake picked it up, shaking his head. "I see you planned your escape," he said. "A well-thought-out plan, I'd say." He rubbed his arms. It was getting cold. He snickered. "Why did the freezer run away before its wedding? It got cold feet." He sighed and finally closed the fridge door. Just as he did, his phone buzzed with a text from his friend. "Is your refrigerator running?" Jake grinned and texted back. "Mine too. See you at the refrigerator race tomorrow." He sat down, still chuckling to himself. The fridge had been through a lot tonight, but at least it never had meltdowns. It was always emotionally stable. After all, it was always chill. Always. A guy driving a Kia pulls up at a stoplight next to a Rolls-Royce. The driver of the Kia rolls down his window and shouts to the driver of the Rolls. "Hey, buddy, that's a nice car. You got Wi-Fi in your Rolls? I've got Wi-Fi in my Kia." The driver of the Rolls looks over and says simply, "Yes, I have Wi-Fi." The driver of the Kia says, "Cool. Hey, you got a fridge in there too? I've got a fridge in the back seat of my Kia." The driver of the Rolls, looking annoyed, says, "Yes, I have a refrigerator." The driver of the Kia says, "That's great, man. Hey, you got a TV in there too? You know I got a TV in the back seat of my Kia." The driver of the Rolls, looking very annoyed by now, says, "Yes, I have a television. A Rolls-Royce is the finest luxury car in the world." The driver of the Kia says, "That's a very cool car. Hey, you got a bed in there too? I got a bed in the back of my Kia." Upset that he didn't have a bed, the driver of the Rolls-Royce sped away. He went straight to the dealer where he promptly ordered that a bed be installed in the back of the Rolls. The next morning, the driver of the Rolls picked up his car. The bed looked superb, complete with silk sheets and brass trim. It was clearly a bed fit for a Rolls-Royce, so the driver of the Rolls drove around all day looking for the Kia. Finally, late that night, he finds the Kia parked, with all the windows fogged up from the inside. The driver of the Rolls gets out of his car and knocks on the Kia's window. At first, there is no answer. Then the owner sticks his head out, soaking wet. "I now have a bed in the back of my Rolls-Royce," the driver of the Rolls said arrogantly. The driver of the Kia says, "You got me out of the shower to tell me that?" Linda Burnett, 23, a resident of San Diego, was visiting her laws, and while there, she went to a nearby supermarket to pick up some groceries. Several people noticed her sitting in her car with the windows rolled up and with her eyes closed. with both hands behind the back of her head. One customer who had been at the store for a while became concerned and walked over to the car. He noticed that Linda's eyes were now open, and she looked very strange. He asked her if she was okay, and Linda replied that she'd been shot in the back of the head and had been holding her brains in for over an hour. The man called the paramedics, who broke into the car because the doors were locked, and Linda refused to remove her hands from her head. When they finally got in, they found that Linda had a wad of bread dough on the back of her head. A Pillsbury biscuit canister had exploded from the heat, making a loud noise that sounded like a gunshot, and the wad of dough hit her in the back of her head. When she reached back to find out what it was, she felt the dough and thought it was her brains. She initially passed out, but she quickly recovered and tried to hold her brains in for over an hour until someone noticed and came to her aid. And yes, Linda is a blonde. A teacher told her young class to ask their parents for a family story with a moral at the end of it and to return the next day to tell their stories. In the classroom the next day, Joe gave his example first. My dad is a farmer and we have chickens. One day we were taking lots of eggs to the market in a basket on the front seat of the truck when we hit a big bump in the road. The basket fell off the seat and all the eggs broke. The moral of the story is not to put all your eggs in one basket. Very good, said the teacher. Next, Mary said, we are farmers too. We had 20 eggs waiting to hatch, but when they did, we only got 10 chicks. The moral of this story is not to count your chickens before they're hatched. Very good, said the teacher again, very pleased with the response so far. Next, it was Barney's turn to tell his story. My dad told me this story about my Aunt Karen. Aunt Karen was a flight engineer in the war and her plane got hit. She had to bail out over enemy territory, and all she had was a bottle of whiskey, a machine gun, and a machete. Go on, said the teacher, intrigued. Aunt Karen drank the whiskey on the way down to prepare herself. Then she landed right in the middle of 100 enemy soldiers. She killed 70 of them with the machine gun until she ran out of bullets. Then she killed 20 more with the machete till the blade broke. And then she killed the last 10 with her bare hands. Good heavens, said the horrified teacher. What did your father say was the moral of that frightening story? The child said, stay away from Aunt Karen when she's been drinking. A successful rancher died and left everything to his devoted wife. She was a very good-looking woman and determined to keep the ranch, but knew very little about ranching, so she decided to place an ad in the newspaper for a ranch hand. 2 cowboys applied for the job. One was gay and the other a drunk. She thought long and hard about it, and when no one else applied, she decided to hire the gay guy, figuring it would be safer to have him around the house than the drunk. He proved to be a hard worker who put in long hours every day and knew a lot about ranching. For weeks, the two of them worked, and the ranch was doing very well. Then one day, the rancher's widow said to the hired hand, "You have done a really good job, and the ranch looks great. You should go into town and kick up your heels." The hired hand readily agreed and went into town one Saturday night. 1 o'clock came, however, and he didn't return. 2 o'clock, and no hired hand. Finally, he returned around 2:30, and upon entering the room, he found the rancher's widow sitting by the fireplace with a glass of wine, waiting for him. She quietly called him over to her. "Unbutton my blouse and take it off," she said. Trembling, he did as she directed. "Now take off my boots." He did as she asked, ever so slowly. "Now take off my socks." He removed each gently and placed them neatly by her boots. "Now take off my skirt." He slowly unbuttoned it, constantly watching her eyes in the firelight. "Now take off my bra." Again, with trembling hands, he did as he was told and dropped it to the floor. Then she looked at him and said, "If you ever wear my clothes into town again, you're fired." A wife rushes home to find that the building where she lives has caught fire. It's surrounded by firefighters and police officers, all preventing anyone from getting through. Panicked, she pushes forward, shouting that her husband is still inside. A firefighter tries to calm her, telling her he's sorry, but everyone who was inside is already dead. The wife becomes even more hysterical, insisting on going in to find her husband. The firefighter explains that because of the fire, all the bodies are burned beyond recognition, their skin coal black, and she won't be able to identify anyone. But the wife insists, "I've been married to him for 20 years. I know every inch of him. I can tell him apart." Finally, the firefighter reluctantly agrees to let her in. She approaches the first body bag, opens it, and reaches down. That's not him," she says. She moves to the second body bag, repeats the process, and says, "Nope, that's not him either." Finally, she opens the third body bag and again reaches down. This time, she pauses for a moment. After a long silence, she says, "This guy isn't even from this building."